Hi guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel Ignite Technologies. So in today's video, we'll be looking at HTML forms. We are still on our HTML focus series. So in the previous video, we talked about HTML div element and its respective attributes. So the HTML div element and the respective attributes. We talked about the ID attribute. We talked about the class attribute. We talked about the style attribute and how to use each and every one of them. So in today's video, we'll be talking about HTML form. So let's proceed. Let me explain a bit of what HTML form means. Like I can say, a HTML form is used to collect user input. Okay, the user input is most often sent to a server for processing. So after collecting the user input, there must be a server, or there must be where the user input will be sent for processing. Maybe what will this user input be used for? For example, will it be used in data analysis, or will it be used in further findings? For example, maybe is a system that is on user profile management, for like a user can create account and log in, something like your Facebook. A user can create account and log in, and when the user logs in, he'll be able to see his uh, designated account, his own custom account, just like our e-portal where we manage students. Okay, when a student is being assigned a unique ID, that's the access ID and the password after registration, he can now log in. So all these things are work of what HTML form, because HTML form tends to be the bedrock for collecting what user input. Even in general, a form is used to collect what data from client. Maybe in business, it's used to collect data from clients. It's used to collect what information from users in terms of digital form of a thing. So, like I said, that the HTML4 is used to collect user input, and the user input is most often sent to a server for processing. So, before you create a HTML form, okay, before you create a HTML form, you must know one thing. You must know about the form element, okay, the form element. And how do you call this form element? Before you create a HTML form, you must know about the form element. So, let's look at what the form element is all about. The HTML form element is used to create a HTML form for user input. And how does the simple syntax goes? You come to your word body. Inside the body tag, the opening and closing tag, you add your word form. That's how your HTML word form element goes. It has an opening and closing tag. You know, almost in everything we are doing in HTML, we'll be making use of the word nested HTML element. You'll be seeing element inside element. That is what builds up the word structure of a HTML document. Elements inside element. You'll be seeing element. You'll be seeing some empty element. You'll be seeing elements that are complete, that has opening tag and closing tag, has what a content that goes in between them. So before you create a HTML form, you must always know about the form element. You have to declare the word form element, because they say that form is used to what collect user data and further send to the server for processing. So let's proceed. Okay. So the next thing we are going to look, we have looked at the syntax of form. Okay. So let's look at the input element. Okay. So in terms of collecting data from user, okay, there are so types of input we are going to be using. Some of the input elements we have is almost often used for form element. That's what we use input element for. And we have so many of them. Some of them we have the input type text. Okay, input type text. We have the input type text. It displays a single line text input field. We have the input type radio. Displays a radio button for selecting what one of many options. That means selecting only one option at a time. That's the work of a radio button. Then we have input type checkbox. Displays a checkbox for selecting zero or more of many options. Okay, that means checkbox allows you to select multiple options at a time. Okay, then we have input type submit. displays a submit button for submitting your form that will now have input type button, displays a clickable button. Not that you don't have other input type, you also have input type number, okay, that allows you to what? That allows the user to input numbers, especially whole numbers, okay? But it can still allow the user to input decimal. But there is an attribute used to do that. I'll be showing in the course of this tutorial. I'll be showing that we have some other input type, like we have date time. Okay, there are so many input type. We have input type file that allows a user to upload a file to the server. Okay, so we have so many other input type, but these ones are just the basic one, and this one will help you to create a basic HTML form. So let's look at each and every one of them, how they work, and how you can use them to create your word form completely. So the first thing we are going to do is we go to our word file where we have created our form. So the first thing we are going to do is we always get the label. We need to get the label tag. The label tag just tells the word user the more details about that particular input type. It tells the user the more details about what that particular input type. So we type label. Okay, so the label can be name. Okay, so after the label, you now add an input type. The input type you are going to use for name is text because it will be accepting characters, numbers. You understand? It will accept characters, numbers, and words, special characters as well. So it's an input type text. Okay, so that's just the thing. Input type text. Okay, so we add another one. Let's say label. Can say this one will now be input type words. Let's say amount. Let's use amount for example. Let's say we want to create a form that accepts name and amount you want to pay. As input type number. Okay, so this is how it works. So the next one is let's add label. Can say um uh, let's say taxes. Since we want it to select many options at the same time, we use input type what? Checkbox. Can say input type check box. Okay, so input type check box. So let's say the first inside the task we have VAT. Okay, let's keep it because if you will keep after the input type, you add VAT. Okay, you add input type, call it checkbox. Okay, you maybe add a direct task. Okay, so the next one will be input type checkbox. Can say this one to be indirect task. Okay, so let's add the radio button. I said label. Have you made a payment before? You can now use the radio button since it selects one option at a time. Okay, you can say input type radio. Okay, we now say yes. We add another. I say input type radio. Now I say no. So we now have to add an input type that will serve as a button. Okay, and now I have to add an input type. And I say input type equal to submit. this one is that will display a button that will be enable you to what? Submit the form. So input type submit. Okay. So we now need to add a value. So the input type submit needs to have a value. So the value it will display, value is just the output it will display, will be submit. Okay. So that's the thing. So let's look at how our form looks like. So the first thing we need to do is to label our form properly. Can come on top before the form. We say H1. Just okay. Let's use H3. I say H3. Say payment form. Okay. So let's just read copy paths. Go to our web browser. Press the path. Okay, you can see how your form looks like. So let's just make this form to be arranged in one, like to be arranged vertically, not horizontally. So what do we do? After each of the input type, you add the word break line. You add the word break line. You understand? Add a break line. So after each of the input type, you add a break line. Add a break line also here. So that's how you do that. You refresh. So you can see that it is a bit a way arranged, right? So that's how your words, that's how your simple HTML form looks like. Okay, so that's how you create your word, simple HTML form. So that is how it looks like. So let's proceed with the next thing. So there is another thing I need us to understand. For each of these input type, we have something we call name attributes. So this name attribute is what the processor sees, is what the processor makes reference to whenever it's picking the value of the input of the user. So before you call a processor, just like your PHP is a hypertext preprocessor, PHP is a processor. Okay, before you call your PHP to be able to process this form, the form needs to get needs to have a name attribute. The input types needs to have a name attribute because the value of this name attribute, okay, that the processor will be picking from. That's what the processor will use to be able to store the values gotten from the user through what the form. Okay, so how do you do that? You now come to this input type and type name. So the name attributes can be full name, f name as full name. So you come to this number and type name. So the value of the name attribute can be amount. Okay, so you come to this checkbox, you can type name attribute will be task. But let me explain something to you. This name attribute don't need to change. Okay, it doesn't need to change. Okay, so this name attribute needs to be 1. But how do you, after the name attribute being 1, for example, the name attribute is the same thing, must be the same thing, since we are picking the same option, but we are just picking from one place. Okay, the processor is being able to store the option. It's trying to store the options in one place. It's seeing it as 1. The processor is seeing it as 1. Yes, the server process is seeing it as 1. But how do we now differentiate the one that is VAT and the one that is direct task and the one that is indirect task? That means we need a name and value or attribute in terms of checkbox. So the name attribute to the task, so the value now can make the value to be VAT, meaning that if the processor is picking the name attribute task, it should store the value VAT for the one that I click. It should start with the value, because this is the value I will use to know, run some conditional statement during processing to know the actual one it picked. Okay, so the same thing you do to the direct task. You also add the name attribute to be the same thing. name attribute with us, then value should be what? Direct tax. Okay, so the next one is the checkbox. Same thing. Checkbox on the for the indirect tax is the same thing. Name attribute should be tax. So value now should be what? Indirect tax. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I will do the same thing to the radio button. The name attribute will be you can say option. Okay, let's use pay. Name attribute is pay, so value will be 1, for example. So name can be pay. You can make yours answer depending, so the value should be 0, meaning that if the value is stored for the radio button is 1, it should be equal to yes. Then if the value stored for the radio button is 0, it should be what? Equal to 0, meaning that from the value stored from the name attribute of the radio, if it's equal to 1, it should be yes. If it's equal to 0, it should be no. So that's how it works. So that's just the thing. And this is how perfectly your form will look like. So there is another attribute we call placeholder. It also helps the user to understand. We normally use placeholder in terms of input type test. Input type. We also have an input type known as email. Yes, we also have input type email. Okay, we also have input type password. Okay, so let me show you how this input type work. Let's add it up. You can see label email. I say input type email, name email. Okay, we now add a placeholder to inform the user on what to add. If the user can't be able to relate with the label, this placeholder will also inform the user what to add to there. You can now send the placeholder, please enter your email. Okay, so the next input type we are adding is the password. So first of all, add a label, say password. Okay, we now add our input type, password, input type, and say password. Name attribute should be password, or we can just say pwd. Then placeholder, please enter your preferred password. This is just for a beginner in programming, okay? But if it's more advanced coding, they will just write for you email password, okay? So you know what to put. But I'm just trying to break these processes down so that you see how it works, okay? So this place, I will still add a placeholder to the word input type test. I say placeholder. What should be there? Enter your full name, okay? So let's refresh and see the changes made to our form. So you can see there is changes in our form. So that's the thing. There is changes in our form. So add BR here also to space. So refresh to see the changes. Okay, wow. That's everything looks great, and the form is trying to come up to what we need. Okay, so that is how the basic HTML form looks like. So let's look at the other attributes, other input types we have. Okay, before we come to the form attributes. Okay, so some of the other input type we have is we have input type, we have dates, can say date of birth or DOB, anyway you want to call it. Can say input type to be equal to date. Okay, so we now say the name attribute will be DOB. Okay, it doesn't necessarily need to have a placeholder because already date of birth is boldly written. Okay, so the next thing we are going to do is to save and try to refresh to see the changes. Wow. So you can see that the input type brings a month, date, and year. So once you click on this calendar icon, it will show your date picker. Although before, all these are input types that you are adding, we are not added to the older HTML. You mostly use JavaScript to validate some of these things in older HTML, but thank you to HTML5 that's already bring all these things predefined, okay, already existing. So you just need to know how it works, okay. Once you know how it works, you can be able to code them. So that's how you add the date of that. So we also have another input type we call the date time, and just say time, for example. That's the input type, date time. Okay, so you can say that the name should be time, name attribute should be time. So let's refresh and see how this one looks like. Okay, we add a break line. Okay, let's refresh. Wow, so it doesn't necessarily have an effect. Okay, so that is some of the input type we have. So let's go over to the word form attributes. The form attribute. So there are several form attributes we have. The number one form attribute we have is the action. What does the action form attribute specify? The action attribute of the form just specify maybe a predestination where you'll be processing the form. You'll be processing the word details or the input gotten from the user. A file you'll be processing it. Maybe for example, you want to process the detail gotten from the user inside the same word file. You just have to leave the word form action empty, or you just exempt it. That means you remove it. Okay. But if you want to process the file on another file, you need to add the form action and not add the word file name of where the form processing will be taking place. So the next thing you need to do is to add another attribute known as method. Okay. So this method tends to tell you the kind of method of processing you are using. You know, there are majorly two method of processing in form, HTML form. There are two method of processing. We have the post method of processing and the get method of processing. So the post method of processing tends to encrypt. It tends to conceal the functional details of the word input the user just sent and not send it directly to the server. But the get, if you use the get method of processing, it tends to display the input of the user on the address bar of your web browser. So you now see that it's different. This one tends to conceal, meaning that this one is a bit secure, meaning that the post method of processing is a bit more secure than the get method of processing. So you now see the method we'll be using is post. The post can either be in capital letter, meaning it can be in uppercase, or it can be in lower case. So the cases doesn't matter. Okay. Same thing with get method of processing. So we still have another attribute known as encryption type. When we normally use this encryption type is when we try to upload something like files to our server. We are trying to upload file through the server processing to a database. We use the encryption type, and this encryption type has a value. It has a value. So the value will be multi-part, okay, multi-part form data. Okay, so this is how the encryption of form looks like. In case you want to upload something like file, you want to run it through a server processor to your database, you need to use this encrypt type. Encrypt type means encryption type. Inc type means encryption type. So this is the way it's been written. Inc type meaning encryption type. So encryption type is multi-part form data, meaning that the form data is of different method, meaning that the form doesn't contain only one pattern of file or input. It has different words. So you need to use this encryption inc type attribute So you use this ink type attribute to do that. Okay, so that is all for now. So in our next class, in our next tutorial, in our next video, we'll be talking about the word HTML meta tags. So find this content useful. Please do like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, try to use the comment section after watching this video, and also drop a review for us to help us to improve more in our video, and also tell us how you felt after watching this video. Okay, see you again in our next video. Also remember to take out your time to visit our website www.ed9technologies.com. Also visit our social media platform. Okay, thank you so much for watching this video. See you in our next video. Bye bye. Hi everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel Ed9 Technologies. So welcome to our JavaScript full course series. So in today's video, I'll be introducing JavaScript. So I believe by now, so many of you might be asking, what actually is JavaScript programming all about? What can I use JavaScript programming to achieve? If after learning JavaScript, I become a JavaScript developer, what can I actually be able to create? What can I be able to use JavaScript to solve people's problem? So you're in the right track. So in today's video, I'll be introducing JavaScript programming, both the origin and the rest of them. So let's proceed. First thing, in this video full course series of JavaScript, we'll be sectioning it into two parts. The first section is the JavaScript basics, and the second section is the word JavaScript objects. So let's start with the JavaScript basics. Let's look at the word JavaScript overview. If I ask, what is JavaScript? I can say that JavaScript is a dynamic computer programming language. It is lightweight, yes, and most commonly used as a part of web pages. So it is commonly used as part of web pages, whose implementation allow the client-side script to interact with the user and make dynamic pages. So it allows the word client-side script, meaning that the client side is where the user is seeing. It allows the word client-side script to interact with the user and make dynamic pages. It is interpreted programming language with object-oriented capabilities, yes, meaning that everything in JavaScript is being seen as object and web classes. I'll be explaining that further in our subsequent videos, okay? So don't bother much. So JavaScript was first known as LiveScript, but Netscape changed its name to JavaScript, possibly because of the excitement being generated by Java. So JavaScript made its first appearance in Netscape 2.0 in 1995 with the name LiveScript. The general purpose core of the language has been embedded in Netscape, okay, Internet Explorer, and other web browsers. So hope you understand. So we have the ECMA 262 specification defined a standard version of what called JavaScript language, which they said that is a lightweight interpreted programming language designed for creating network-centric applications, complementary to and integrated with Java. Okay, complementary to also and integrated with HTML. It is also open and cross-platform, meaning that it can run in any platform, be it Linux, be it Macintosh OS. Macintosh operating system, be it Windows operating system, it can run on any platform, okay? It's cross-platform. It's not platform independent. So we have the client-side JavaScript. It's mainly the common form of JavaScript, okay? The script should be included in or referenced by a HTML document for the code to be interpreted by the word browser. So in this video on this course series, we'll be most especially writing the word client-side JavaScript code. Okay, this means that a web page need not to be a static HTML, but it can include programs that can interact with the user, control the browser, and dynamically create HTML content. Okay, so JavaScript client-side mechanism provides more advantages over traditional CGI server-side script interface. Okay, For example, you might use JavaScript to check if a user has entered a valid email address in a form field. Okay, so JavaScript is mainly used for what? Form validation. Okay, it helps to what is being used for form validation. So JavaScript code is executed when the user submits the form, meaning that the code is works when an event happens. Okay, event happening can be a button clicking is an event happening in what JavaScript, and only if all the entries are valid they would be submitted to the what web server. Okay, so JavaScript can be used to trap user-initiated events such as button clicks, link navigation, and other actions that the user initiates explicitly or implicitly. Okay, so some of the advantages of JavaScript include one, less server interaction, meaning that you can validate user input before sending the page off to the server, and this saves server traffic, which means there is less load on your server. Okay, so another one of the advantages of JavaScript is immediate feedback to the visitors. They don't have to wait for a page to load to see if they have forgotten to enter something. To increase interactivities and thing. You can also create interfaces that react when the user hovers over them with a mouse or activates them via the keyboard. Okay, so JavaScript also, one of the core advantage of JavaScript is has richer interfaces, meaning you can use JavaScript to include items such as drag and drop components, sliders, as your image sliders, to just give a rich interface to your site visitors. So one of the limitations of JavaScript is it cannot be treated as a full-fledged programming language, and it lacks important features because client-server JavaScript doesn't allow reading or writing of files. Okay, and this has been kept for security reasons. JavaScript cannot be used for networking application because there is no such support available. And it doesn't have any multi-threading or multiprocessor capability, meaning that it can be able to do multiple things at the same time. It can do that. Once again, JavaScript is a lightweight. Okay? It's interpreted programming language that allows you to just build interactivity into otherwise static or HTML page. So instead of leaving your HTML page static, you be able to use JavaScript to create something like picture image slice, uh, button clicks, um, making some object to rotate on your website. All these are what works of what JavaScript. So before we proceed in writing a JavaScript, we need the development tool. And the development tool of a JavaScript is you need a code editor. So there are so many code editor. We have the Notepad++, we have the Brackets code editor, we have the Sublime Text code editor, we have the Atom code editor, then we have the Microsoft Visual Studio Code. And in this course series, we are going to be using what? Microsoft Visual Studio Code as the code editor we'll be using to write our what? JavaScript codes. Okay, so that's the code editor we'll be using to write our JavaScript code. So in our next video, we'll be talking about the JavaScript syntax. Okay, so thank you so much for watching this video. Find this content useful, please do like, subscribe, and also share our video content. Please do take out your time to visit our official website www.ednightstechnologies.com. Also remember to turn on your notification bell to know when we upload some useful content that you might be interested to watch. Okay, so thank you so much. See you in our next video. Bye bye.